higher view. Welcome, welcome. It is Thursday, August 6th. I'm so glad that you are here with us today. Today is our Church and Family Spheres Day. And we have the huge blessing to have an amazing woman who is in all of those spheres and so much with inner healing. And so for those of you that know my background and my love and my heart for inner healing and marriage, she's like combined it all. So I'm so excited about today. Anyway, so can't wait for you to get to know her and hear a little bit about her heart, where she's at, what she's doing, what she's hearing, all that kind of good stuff. But Cheryl, why don't you go ahead and introduce Sharla? Give everybody the deets, because I know you guys are personal friends and connected through Upper Room. So,
yes, welcome, Sharla. So excited to have you here today. So I've been attending Upper Room for maybe about 4 years, and one of the first things that I was told is you need to go see Sharla. And so I went to see her, immediately after that, and did an inner healing session with her, and got to know her and her heart. So she is the founder of the INNERROOM, which is the inner healing ministry at Upper Room. She is also the pastoral counseling pastor, I guess that's probably not exactly the way to say it, but over family and marriages and relationships. So that's just really her heart, is to help us get with Jesus and get whole, and take that into our world. So we're glad to have you here.
Well, I'm honored to be asked. Thank you very much. This is a real privilege, and so I'm just really excited to be able to share, a heart for marriage.
Yeah. How did you get, so I know like my path on it, inner healing and in that ministry and stuff, and and how we navigated into marriage ministry, and then of course Papa threw the higher view in my lap, and so here we are. But what has your journey been? How did you get started? Like in inner healing and the different modalities, or whatever you do, and then you're navigating into marriage ministry and all of that. So what's that? Where'd that come from?
Well, it was just the Lord. I had no idea that any of this existed. I'm not kidding. I was raised in a very conservative church. And so, but I always had a real hunger and a real heart. Like I just sensed there was something more, than what I was receiving, in my church. I've been married for 40 years. My husband, I met him during a season of extreme rebellion from that, very legalistic, conservative background. And so I've been married to a non-believer, for all these years. And so I think that really created an extra urgency in my heart to be able to really connect with something that is real, that could really guide me and steward me. We're the proud parents of 3 beautiful daughters. We now have 7 grandbabies, legalistic, conservative. And so we made a physical move, which caused me to have to change churches, to start looking for a new church home. And so when I went to the new church home, this was in 2008, trying to get involved, trying to connect. And they made an announcement one Sunday morning, we're about to start training up our next team for our intercessory prayer department. And I thought, that's my way to get connected. I can do that, And then, but then when they started sending me the sign up forms and the charge and all the materials, they are really serious about their intercessory prayer here at this church. And so I didn't realize until I was in it. And it was an 8-week commitment, 3 hours a night, weekly. Mm-hmm. And so then as I'm sitting through that training, I really, in that moment, I think I just kind of felt like Abraham, who said, pack up and I'll show you the land. I felt like I'm like 45 years old and I have finally found what I'm here, to be able to do. And so it just grabbed my heart, because it was about inner healing. It was about these personal connections, being able to really hear directly from him, to invite him into those places, that are just still unresolved. And all the counseling, and we understand that so much of what we're experiencing today is coming from unresolved, earlier childhood wounds and injuries. And so and just understand that he is the great physician. He's the wonderful shepherd. Like, it's for freedom that he's come to set us free. And it just actually broke my heart when I realized I spent all these years in church and didn't realize that I could actually have an attachment, a personal attachment with God himself.
Wow. Yeah.
Jesus just can't wait to come in and to meet us in those places. Like, he truly is standing at the door and waiting, for us to open and invite him in. And I just feel like we're so uninformed,
Right.
As the church body, to his availability and how to really access him, in those ways. And so my heart was just fully alive for inner healing. It's like all of a sudden, I no longer pray for people the same way that I used to. It's like, as soon as they're coming to me and asking for prayer, instead of trying to pray them out of something or pray something off of them, I'm like, let's walk into it, because he wants to meet you there. I can't wait for you, to connect with his perspective and to hear from him. And so that was my heart. That was my passion from 2008. I think it was 2012 that we finally founded the INNERROOM and started this little, it's a separate entity from the Upper Room. It's a nonprofit ministry. And so I did that for a while. And then I started realizing, because now I've also just realizing so much of what people are coming in with their pains actually has to do with marriage situations. And then I began to recognize, we can still be really, really, our hearts can be healed, but we can still be ill-equipped and unaware about just some practical, relational skills and tools, and just understanding, relationship and dynamics and how to communicate, about keeping your relational circuits on, about the power of the attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started just going to different conferences and researching and trying to, gain some more understanding about the marriage. And so that's how I kind of started slowly transitioning over, in the Upper Room to ministering to marriages. And it's also, I found this inner healing is such a powerful tool when you're meeting with couples. It's so powerful when you've got a husband and a wife sitting together and there's some, tension between them that they just haven't been able to resolve cognitively or through conversation. And then I'll just pause in that moment and just ask, for example, her, can you just feel that pain that you're experiencing right there, and let her begin in a really safe place to begin to go there to explore that. The husband is sitting there watching how deep and how real that the pain is that she's been reacting to, on the surface level based on the relationship. And then to be able to see the Lord come in and to minister to his wife in such a beautiful way. His heart is just completely opened down. There's a whole new understanding about what's really been going on in the relationship. It's so much more than what the enemy wants us to believe about our spouse is the enemy. My problem is you.
Yeah, right.
So it just reframes everything. But during that time, also with the inner healing, kind of developing the inner healing, I just kind of began to understand I haven't really found a silver bullet yet. I haven't found just one specific modality.
Yeah.
That's ministered to all the different needs. And so during those years of building out the INNERROOM, my heart was just to really go from ministry to ministry to learn as much as I could so that our team is well equipped in several different modalities, and so that they can just really minister to whatever's presenting,
Yeah.
That is awesome, Sharla. I'm sorry, Melissa, were you going to ask something? Sharla, I was thinking about one of the things that's been important to me, and as Daddy God has shown me, that we need to direct people towards Luke 4:18. Let's step through these processes and procedures of, like you said, let's just meet it head on. Let's see Jesus in every aspect of our woundedness, our brokenness. So when you say the different modalities, I personally am just a strong advocate of restoring the foundations, and RTF literally saved my life and marriage to be transparent. So could you tell us some of those modalities that you're operating in? Is it SOZO, RTF? Do you use all of those type of programs?
Our ministry is set up, we're kind of, we have people schedule in 2-hour appointments. So it's a much smaller, it's very specific. When someone's in pain, they just kind of come in and it's a 2-hour ministry, really to meet them in the pain that's presenting or what's brought them in.
Gotcha.
And so ours, I think RTF is a little bit more just really helping them understand the foundations, forgiveness, anger, and maybe kind of cognitively, and a little bit more of the inner healing, kind of going in, understanding the power of those childhood injuries and the early years, and getting Jesus's perspective in this. So the whole premise of the upper room is his presence transforming lives. And so everything about the upper room is presence based. It started off as just a prayer room gathering that just has evolved into this, this church and all these people that we're, wanting to pastor and to love and minister to now. So the inner room is just a more focused to encounter his presence on specific things, that people are coming in with. So the modalities we use are, we do use the sozo. We use, still sometimes I have found that theophostic is still really important when you're going in and really working with deep fractures, deep wounds. And then heart sync is the most current modality that we're utilizing and are founding. It's very different perspective from the theophostic. Theophostic is pretty much starting with the pain that's presenting and letting that pain take you to the source and find where it originated, meet Jesus in that place. Heart sync is more about just really ministering to the whole heart, because there's so many scriptures about a divided heart, and the power of really ministering to the heart. And it starts, those sessions start with a beautiful connection with Jesus. So they really build that joy capacity, that place with him. Kind of the analogy is it's a little bit easier to go down into the dark, scary basement if you're holding daddy's hand, and then you have to go down the stairs and wait to find him, at the bottom. So
that's real good. That's real good. I like that approach. Yeah.
So Sharla, I'm just curious because I've been in inner healing and deliverance since I was actually 13 years old, which whole nother story. And my theory has always been like, I want to learn all the different quote unquote modalities so that I have them in my tool belt and whip out whatever it is that, Holy Spirit's doing. So is your team like the same? Are they cross-trained in all the different things? Or is it literally like this person's doing theophostic, this person, so they're all cross-trained?
All cross-trained. Because I want everyone that comes in to have equal opportunity. I want everyone that comes in, because we never know what people are going to be bringing when they come in. We never know what the pain is or how they're going to be ministered to from that inner healing realm. And so all the facilitators, they have their bios, what the different modalities that they're trained in. But those are the main ones that all our facilitators are very familiar with. It's heart sync, sozo, theophostic. And then obviously aware of deliverance, ministries and tools as well. Because dealing in those deep places, there's a lot of resistance to things that would want us to go there and receive the healing and the freedom.
Yeah, and I agree. Like Kathleen, I absolutely love restoring the foundations. I think their modality is great. I think that it actually the full one. I can't remember what it's called because they've got focused ministry, issue focus, and then the big one absolutely saved my husband's life and our marriage.
Great.
So I absolutely think it is amazing, but to run it through an inner healing room doesn't really function that well, because obviously like the inner healing, you're going to have one session, 1 hour session, 2 hour session, they go in 4 hour blocks. To do stuff, but it is an amazing foundational tool. I would encourage everybody to conceptually grab anyway the foundation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But, I love how it seems to be anyway. Of course, I love it because this is what I do. But how you have this diverse set of tools that people are coming with now, a tool belt, and versus I do theophostic, or because most people aren't even going to have a clue what that is.
Right.
All they know is like, my life is not functioning right now. I don't care how you're going to fix it. I just need you to help me fix it, And so at least that's what I find. You know, they're not like, I want you to do so on me, or Shabbat or whatever. You know, they usually they don't have an idea. They just want to get out of the pain. And I love watching people flow, you know, in all the different ones. It's just amazing to me to watch. And you're like, oh, this is how they flowed into that. That was really cool. So your journey into the pastoral counseling or the marriage counseling or marriage ministry, something else that you said there that I just thought was so big, and I'm hoping that the viewers, you know, grab a hold of this, is you were like, people can get all kinds of heart healing and all this other kind of stuff, but they're not grabbing a hold of relational tools. They're not grabbing a hold of, you know, actual practical skills. And we are body, soul, and spirit. So if we don't address the issue, body, soul, and spirit, we don't address practical tools, which is, you know, the physical aspects of relational, you know, active communication, you know, blah, 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 and the soul issues, you know, and growing in our spirit, then we're just going to chase those issues around all the time.
Yeah, the analogy that I use is that inner healing is more, I think it's more right brain, you know, it's more experiential. It's going into depth, into the heart, where the practical skills that we learn counseling have such a high value, you know, for counselors and for tools and for cognitive understanding, recognizing patterns, understanding, having new ways to respond, literally a new language that we kind of have to learn sometimes. But what happens is when those injuries, when those childhood wounds show up and when we're triggered, the very first thing that goes offline is the part of our brain where all those skills are stored. So I've got a complete tool belt. And when the moment I'm triggered, I no longer have access, you know, to any of the information that's stored there. And so the beauty of working the both together is once we get the healing, then we'll be able to stay present enough in the moment to access the practical tools, you know, that we need to navigate those, the relationship.
Yeah, I love how you're integrating that.
Yeah, you can always try to explain someone out of their pain, you know, but it's not a head issue, you know, it's a heart issue. And so I think we tend to do that with people. We tend to say, well, you know, here's the reason you shouldn't think that way, or here's a scripture, and, you know, and like you said, we're dealing with the part of the brain that's not even really being accessed when they're operating out of their wounding.
And another analogy that we use, or that I just try to share and help people understand, is that we're constantly operating from two different belief systems. We have a head knowledge. I can believe with all of my heart and soul, every word in the Bible, that Jesus is sufficient to supply all of my needs. Greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. And I can do all things, you know, through Christ who strengthens me. However, if I have an unresolved injury, then my experiential belief is absolutely going to trump my head knowledge, you know, every time. Experiential belief just always supersedes, it overrides what we know in our head. So for example, if I, you know, go to work in the morning and find out, you know, I don't have a job, I know tomorrow, you know, when I go home tonight, I have 4 mouths to feed, I have a car payment and house payment tomorrow. If anything less than the perfect peace of Christ shows up inside of me at that moment, my true belief, my experiential belief system has just been exposed. And so, and it's just exactly what you're saying, Cheryl. Instead of trying to talk people out of my panic, my anxiety, my fear, how about we just let it take us to the source? And, you know, the whole goal is to get them back, you know, connected, because, it really says that Jesus keeps in perfect peace, you know, and that, and so when we're not experiencing peace, we have disconnected even from him. That kind of goes back to the attachment, you know, and the value of staying really connected to him. So as soon as something less than the perfect peace of Christ is showing up, because we can still be in a lot of turmoil, a lot of unsettledness, you know, we can even be in pain, but still be at peace. And so I think that's something that a lot of us haven't really experienced, you know, and it's just until you kind of begin that journey, it's hard to believe it actually exists, you know, until you've been able to experience something, an extreme trial. That doesn't mean that it's not uncertain and it can be a little scary, but there's still this resolute, peace that is able to carry you through it.
Yeah. Sharla, when I think about what's going on in the earth today, and you marry all of the chaos, the confusion, the division, even in the body of Christ. So we all have new crises to deal with. We have new potential traumas based on how COVID may be impacting us personally, how our economic personal conditions may be influencing the dynamics of our homes, and how has Daddy God given you? I'm just amazed at the gift, and I just see the oil flowing in your life, that He's giving you new strategies on how to continue to deal with the individual manifestation of personal issues with the huge challenges we have here in the earth, especially as the remnant, as we try to help each other navigate these times.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when I have to take a deep breath and try not to get overwhelmed, because I take it right back to, I think it's all about us as a body, as the workers, really being able to equip the church and help because the solution is in personal connection. It's in personal experience. And so there's just such a burden on my heart, to be able to get the message out and to have enough workers that are equipped and skilled and know just how to do the simple, facilitating. The whole goal to me of inner healing is facilitating their connection with Jesus, And so I wish I had a big solution. And I mean, my heart is.
He's giving it to you, Sharla. Well, I see it. He's giving it to you. He's giving you greater strategies, and even in the tactical ways that He's going to navigate this time, help us to navigate this time. He's giving it to you. So just wait on it.
Thank you. And that is my heart. It is to it's not just to be in the room doing the one-on-one healing, but it is to train and equip teams, not only in the inner room for the inner healing, but also getting into the marriage arena and really trying to divide these lanes, because we're still developing the marriage ministry. But where we're at so far is that we're running in 4 different tracks. We've really learned that there's a lot of value in the one-on-one, obvious, counseling, sitting down, really mentoring, walking with, but there's also a real shift of dynamic when you start together in couples, in small groups, where you're creating a really safe space to be heard, to be seen, to be real, to not be afraid of being known. And so we're running a marriage track, 16-week courses where we're really working with the couples in these small groups. Then we're doing the same thing, trying to prepare people for marriage. I would love for our culture to shift from premarital counseling to pre-engagement counseling, because a lot of times by the time they come for premarital, they're 6 weeks out, the venues are set, and it's going to be a real rare occasion. I think since 2016, I think we've only had maybe 4 couples that have really paused, backed off, reconsidered, waited, and maybe, some of them I think have decided not to marry at all because of some of the things that were exposed and revealed, because they didn't understand. The only, for the most part, it's really sad. In school, they teach us reading, writing, and arithmetic, but there's nothing about relationship. And relationship is something we do every day of our life, no matter where we're interacting, we're doing relationship. And it's, to me, one of the most important things. And we don't have any skills. We've not been trained. The only way we know how to do relationship is how we learned it in our family dynamic, our family of origin. And so we just continue to perpetuate, all we have, based on what we experienced. And so I think that training and equipping, even in relational skills, is very important also. It's amazing how many times I can see relationships shift just because they now have a piece of understanding they didn't have before. They're able to recognize things. So that's the premarital track that we're running. Those are going to be 10 week. We'll just have a continuing flowing rotation, 10 weeks for the premarital track. Then we're also doing relational training and equipping, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to expose and get out tremendous information that's already available. We love the Danny Silk, keep your love on. We love the DTR, define the relationship. It's amazing how little young adults understand about. I love Danny Silk, the la la factor. You're really great. You're right now, but wait a minute. 20 years from now, once the kids are grown, we're past the white picket fence. What direction are our lives going? And so, being able to build a vision statement, understand what your heart is, and see if you really, are wanting to run long term, in the same lane. And then we're using a lot of material like from Kay and Milan Yurkovich, the How We Love, again, which is all about attachment styles. Again, back to we only know how to love others to the degree that we figured out how to love in our family of origin. And so it's not really often that you're going to find secure attachments. There's so many other attachment styles. And so being able to even recognize that in ourselves and how that's working in our relationship. And the thing I love about that material, it goes beyond just exposing what your attachment style is. It really gives you insight and helps you understand how to help your spouse. Understanding their attachment style. Okay, well, how can I help you? If you're avoidant, how do I help you not be so terrified by processing emotions? What can I say to you? How can I help you stretch, and grow in that area? So training, equipping, and then we do have the triage unit, the ones that when we really have couples that are in crisis and need, one-on-one, then we definitely meet with them, individually, personally. And then if it's beyond our scope as pastoral counselors, then we have resources. We're just happy to resource people out to the professionals, recognizing that there are people that are gifted and skilled and trained, So just to get people happy and healed. We don't care how they get there, as long as
as long as it happens. Yeah, it's one thing I love about the Jewish culture is they literally start teaching relational skills from like the moment the child. I mean, that's just part of their culture, And the Western church is like, we've just dropped the ball on that. And so, like the things that you're mentioning, and of course mentioning it within the context of marriage. I mean, if we're all just going to be really honest, everybody needs to be reading this material because we all have relationships, whether it's with friends, whether it's family, spouse, and really to the degree that those relationships are going to be fulfilling, and be able to have intimacy in them, because you need to have intimacy in all those different areas, is really going to be to the degree that you're walking in, healing and wholeness and understanding and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I agree. We're so behind the curve, compared to other societies when it comes to relational skills, because we really haven't valued them. And it's sad because that was the whole reason we were created. Was for relationships. So, we're so missing the boat on that.
All the way back to the garden, I mean, to be in a relationship with us, right? That's what we lost, And so, interesting that you should mention that. We have actually opened up our relational equipping classes just to anyone because I have found we're a relatively young congregation. A lot of the people, that come to the upper room. And so I was really surprised. We just launched a new class, two new classes this week. And the majority of the people that showed up in person, we're having to run in person and Zoom simultaneously. So that's a little bit of a challenge this week. But of the people that actually showed up in person, I was really surprised. There wasn't one married couple in that group. There were 2 dating couples, there was an engaged couple, and the rest of them were singles. And so it just
that gives me hope. I'm like, yes.
And that's what we're finding. There's such a hunger. There's such a longing for that multicultural. They want mamas. They want papas. They want something different than what they had modeled for them.
Yep.
And so, And back to you mentioned the Jewish. I'm just like, I'm just really love the whole Jewish thing. Even when you just think about all the things that are represented in the Jewish wedding, the different aspects of that. It is about family. It is about relationship. I mean, just the
whole ketubah that they make. It's all, it's the whole family thing. I know it's, I've raised, I have 3 boys. One of them's still home, but the middle one just got married literally a week before we shut down in March. And they've all known, like, you know, you're marrying a family. You're not marrying a girl. You know, the girl is marrying your family. This is a family ordeal. And, you know, family was involved from, you know, dating through the engagement. And it was funny, you talk about pre-engagement counseling. Actually, my oldest, which I want to make sure she's not watching, right? Anyway, she's expecting it because they actually did that. You know, we do the prepare enrich stuff. And so instead of doing it as a premarital, we talked about, I'm like, well, why don't you guys go ahead and do, you know, you already are talking about getting married, you know, haven't gotten engaged. Why don't you guys go ahead and go through that? And let's see, you know, how compatible, where are you guys on this, you know, same page, not, where's some growth areas, blah, blah, blah. You know, start working that out now, right? So that by the time you are walking down the aisle, you guys are solid. You know, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to come up, but what an amazing foundation to start on. And of course, you know, Dad and I are sitting here prep like, oh, what if it comes back like this is a disaster, you know? But actually, it was quite the opposite. We were like, they're more compatible than we are. What in the world? Yeah. But it's a great idea. I would love to see propagated more. And, you know, kids know when they're on the marriage path. You know, it's pretty rare, I would think, that some girl is literally shocked out of her mind, didn't see that coming. We've never had a conversation, you know. And so to take that responsible step of, let's go investigate if this is the right time for us. Not let's go investigate if we should ever get married, you know, if this is the right time.
Yes.
You know?
Right. And that's what we're hoping to actually roll into as we start to work on the premarital track. We're going to use the SIMBAS material. We do use the prepare and enrich for a lot of the marriage. I love the assessments and being able to really compare, you know, how they work. And so, but even in the SIMBAS program, we're trying to navigate that because it would be hard for them to come into SIMBAS without another person, because those assessments are used to pair, you know, the one that you're taking the assessment with. But even if you just take it with a friend, just come in, you know, so that you can have those red flags, those markers identified in your own life, so you can begin early on, whether you're in a committed relationship, just to understand some of the things that maybe I need to focus on and to mature in and to grow in, so that when I am ready, you know, to really do relationship, I'll be more equipped, you know, healed and prepared, you know, to do that.
Yeah, that's really good. I love it.
You know, coming from my perspective, and I'm sure we have some viewers that are divorced and, you know, or even broken engagements or things like that. You know, I don't think that the body as a whole has had a really good game plan, you know, for trying to help people navigate that, you know. So, you know, I wondered if you might could speak to that a little bit, Sharla, some of what you're seeing, you know, with after it's broken up, you know, it's not always amiable. It's not always both people's choice, both of the couple. You know, how are you ministering to that group in Upper Room?
Well, and that's another thing in the relational equipping, and some of the things that we want to present is to help people recognize not everybody is a safe person. I mean, for the most part, a lot of people that are raised in the church were really just kind of, well, for me, I can speak for me, you know, just about being, I always want to be kind. I always give the person the benefit of doubt. You know, I always want to turn the other cheek. I always want to. And so in working in marriages, just to speak to this part, Cheryl, about, you know, sometimes it wasn't both people weren't necessarily, you know, the reason, you know, that the divorce happened. Sometimes they just find themselves in a situation that's very unsafe, and they they had no choice. Someone made that decision for them. Now they find themselves. And so what I've also found is just really important to help equip people in understanding just different realistic personality things that are out there, and how to just be aware, how to be wise, how to discern some of the patterns that you may see, when you're dating. A lot of times we don't realize it until we're already on the other side of the divorce, what we kind of stepped into, because we didn't recognize the warning signs before we said I do. And so just being able to train and equip to open their eyes and to help them see there is just a level, of discernment, and then getting the healing, that possibly need, so that they can make wiser choices. They can stand firm, to the things that they know and they believe to be true. And so we do have several people, that we have many couples we've worked with where it's either they both have been, married before, or maybe one is just married. And so that's what I love about a lot of the material that we use. They also have separate tracks for that are really, to really highlight, to help navigate and prepare people, because that navigating those marriage, can be a little bit different, especially if you've got a blended family now, you're bringing other children into it. It's a much more complex dynamic, to work with but there's, don't not get married again, learn what to look for,
Right.
For marriage. I love marriage. It's
well, it's really kingdom building. I got this picture of it after my divorce. The good king in the old days would plan from the time that child was born, especially a daughter, but even a son or a prince. Who are they going to marry? They spend their whole life preparing for the joining of two kingdoms, or even if it's just nobles, or in the old days. And really, I have a vision of that now. Would be what I would look for, is someone who feels like I bring something, they bring something, and then the kingdom is expanded, the kingdom is strengthened, because there's something there more than just we enjoy Netflix and chilling together.
Right. Yeah. And I think when we're working with those couples where there's been at least one previous marriage, really working with that one and helping them know that they're in a really safe place to be honest, and to really look back at that relationship and what part of that can you own? There's, just everybody has a little bit of an ownership in how that relationship worked. Not that you can change the other person at all, but, maybe, I'll be honest, not what could I have done not only differently, but maybe at what point should I have recognized this isn't even a safe place to be anymore, and start reaching out for help. And so there's just healing also, that gets to happen, in those places. Because I think really understanding that one of the material that we're using right now, the very first chapter, is about the only circle I can manage is the one that I'm standing in. You know what I mean? All I can do is manage me. And I love Danny Silk, on our very best day, if we can just manage us, we've done a good job, and so learning how to just take ownership for myself and not try to control the other. If anything else, really, how do I protect you from me when I'm not acting like myself, or when I'm not? How do I protect our marriage? How do I protect you from me until I can pause, go back, identify what's really going on, and learn how to navigate, how to show up differently, how to interact differently.
Yeah, I think too, you tapped on something earlier in when we were talking about the pre-engagement thing, and relational skills, and knowing when to identify the red flags, because a lot of what we find, or at least a lot of what I have found, especially you have two things. One, when you have a couple that's in love, right? They've got these rose-colored glasses, and those red flags look pretty, right? In that stage. And so they're overlooking it. And then oftentimes what I see in marriages is there'll be red flags, but the spouse is like, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand on this one, right? And instead of what could I have done different, is identify and address.
Mhm.
You know, because one of the things that I've seen in doing marriage mentoring is the avoidance of addressing hard issues. It's like, I'm like, why did you wait until we got here until you came? I was like, oh, you know, we could have addressed this 5 years ago before it was a, you know, mountain. And I think that's really going to help in people learning those relational skills, learning what flags look like. What do you do with flags? You know, and I think that could help so many marriages have those, you know, brave conversations, really creating safe environments, brave conversations, which really requires connection, relationship, intimacy, all that other kind of stuff. So I just think, I mean, kind of talking to Cheryl, you know, in those couples that you know, didn't make it. And, you know, for literally, I have not mentored everybody in the world, but for the most part, the couples that we've worked with where, and I'm saying male and female, I know it can go both ways, but, you know, just for the sake of conversation right now, you know, let's say the male's having an affair, or the male's got a pornography issue, or the male's, you know, out drinking all the time or whatever. The women typically know something's up, but they have a tendency to want to walk into nurture, walk into, you know, not really addressing it. We'll focus on taking care of the kids. I'll take care of the house, you know, all this other kind of stuff. I'm going to try and fix all of these other things or make all of these other things as good as I can. And I don't really know how to address what's going on over here.
I think either not know how to address or actually being afraid of what addressing it is going to require.
Right.
What the consequences are. If I really start to address something, the system is going to change and it could be really scary. You know, I could be a single mother of 4 children, you know, trying to support the family. So, again, just being in community, being around people with good support, getting help, but really, keep going back to inner healing, going to that place and finding out what that real fear is and let the Lord speak to that. I'm not going to be able to talk you out of your fear. And I'm not saying it is going to be easy, you know, but only He, through those personal encounters, is going to be able to reassure you that He's got you. He'll walk you through it. And the most important part is that you listen to His voice for the next right step instead of trying to figure out on my own, you know, how to navigate this. So it goes back, you know, to connection, you know, with Him about how to navigate.
I know I'm gonna go way back here, back in the conversation. You had mentioned that your husband wasn't saved. He wasn't a believer. Is he a believer now?
Well, it's kind of funny. Yes, he's definitely coming around. He's just since 2016. He just informed me one night. You know, tomorrow morning. This is a Saturday night. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna go to church over there. I'm like, okay. Well, is that something, you know, that I could do with you, or is this something you want to do by yourself? And he's like, well, no, you know, you're welcome to come. And so just, that was the one thing that I think the Lord has just really put on my heart all along, is that I'm not His Holy Spirit. And if I can just continue, you know, to pray for him, to believe in him. There was someone just this week, a different month, shared a little, I don't know what you call it, but it said the words that you speak to and about your spouse guide the kind of marriage that you're going to have. Are you their biggest fan or their biggest critic? And so, you know, he never told us to change anybody. They just told us to love, and then trying to learn what love actually looks like. Sometimes I think we're a little bit misinformed, you know, on what love actually looks like.
That's a whole nother show. We could have
another day, right? It's a whole other day. And so, yeah, he's involved in a men's Bible study now, and he's reading the Word. And I come home and not catch him, but I mean, I'm just surprised when I walk in and see that he's watching, you know, all the Jesus films on Netflix, just trying to really understand about Jesus and what all that is. And so there's a real, there is a real shift. And again, I'm just trying to wait on the Lord's time for him to like.
Right. Has he seen The Chosen? The new series, The Chosen? Has he watched that?
He loved it.
Oh, I know, isn't it? It's so amazing. I love it. We had Dallas on for an interview really early on, and I'm just like chomping at the bit. I'm like, will you hurry up with season 2?
Finish. Yeah.
I need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a gal that popped up here on a comment when you had said, that you were married and your husband was a believer, and she's, in the same situation with her husband. So those women that are in that situation, speak to that right now.
As hard as that was, and again, raising 3 daughters and trying to keep them in church, and he never interfered with that process. He never told the girls that they didn't need to, to participate and to go to church. He was very supportive for me in that way. But
that's a blessing. That's not always the story. So that's a blessing.
Story. Yeah, that's not always the story. But I'll be honest, I really feel like that that when you don't have your husband to kind of rely on as the spiritual leader, in the family, what you get is Jesus as your husband, and so he gets to be the place that you lean into. I think there's just such an opportunity for intimacy that we can experience with him that we never would have known apart from him being, what I mean? That sort for us. And so I would just encourage, those of you that are in that situation, really just don't look to your husband as your savior. Jesus really is, and he's a really good husband. He's a really good father, and that it just really offers an opportunity, for you to get to know him in a way that you wouldn't have known otherwise. And so just continue to work on, again, your circle, your relationship with the Lord, and trust your spouse, to the Lord. His time. Because no one can come to the Father except through the Son, and no one can come to the Son except the Father draws him. So it's really all about the Father's work.
Yeah.
Along, I think, by the way, that we pray and intercede and cover and speak and declare.
Right. Yeah. And I think from the women's standpoint is to be able to walk into releasing the expectation of what they think their husband's supposed to be in relation, with the Lord and their walk with the Lord and stuff like that. Because I think that's one of the things, especially believing women so desperately want, their husband to also share in such an amazing thing as having a relationship with the Lord, right?
Right.
And so they come at their relationship with their husband with that expectation. And when you can actually get to the point of fully releasing that, like Dave and I had like super, super dark days. We were so close to signing divorce papers so many times. It's not even funny. And I had to get to the place of, you know what, Papa, deal with your son. That's between the two of you, and just focusing, on, like you said, my circle, or, my relationship with the Lord. And to the degree that I could actually release my husband from my expectations, was the degree that I actually got to walk in freedom, and then could even enjoy my husband better.
Yes.
For who he was instead of who he wasn't.
Right.
Exactly.
Ruth Graham wrote a book about prodigals years and years ago, about when her son Franklin went through his prodigal season. And one of the things I remember about that I thought was it's just really good for us in any relationship, because she quoted Jesus when he said, "I sanctify myself." And apparently in the context, I don't remember it exactly, but it was maybe about the disciples were, I don't know, but Franklin was leaving, and she said, Lord, while he's gone, let me sanctify myself. And goes back to what you just said, Melissa, as long as we're focusing more on ourselves and not on the other person, whether it's, a family member, a sibling, a husband or a child or a neighbor, even, as long as we continue to say, I want to be the best I can be.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's really just you and God. I mean, a relationship is wonderful, but all of them are earthly and will end in some way. You don't usually die at the exact same time. So, just continuing to work on herself, like you said.
Yeah.
Love that. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I just wanted to say before we run out of time, I did want to get back to inner healing because if that's okay, if we again,
you don't have a passion for that or anything, being the works director. I know. So
I do. I really do. And really was going to ask you about a couple of things. Building a team, which is what we're doing here in the higher view, but also, maybe I know you can't tell individual stories, but you can see sort of a collective of what are some of the things that you see that happen, either after a session, or some of the obvious things that begin to change in a person's life, after they've been through a session. So any of those that you would want to speak to.
Okay. I guess I could just have a personal example. To me, the value of that inner healing is going to that source where before I used to get really triggered and I would kind of lose my mind. I wasn't present. I wasn't really making good choices, but I felt really powerless to make a clear choice because I was, in so much panic. I had so much fear, and I didn't realize how much fear I had until I started, working in this and receiving my own ministry. And there was one year where it was Christmas Eve. My house is full of family, all the kids, the grandkids, they're in. And my husband pulls me into the garage and he says, I just have to tell you, he said, I've learned today, I've learned that that there's, another company is buying our company out and the current employees aren't needed. So basically January 1st, we're going to be without a job about covering. And I was just,
Christmas.
Yeah. Right. And I'm just looking at him and going, okay, the rest of the story. And he even said, Sharla, are you listening to what I'm saying? Are you hearing that we're not going to have a job, in January? And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I hear exactly what you're saying. But inside, I was envisioning myself on the front row of the movie theater with the jumbo popcorn and the giant drink. Couldn't wait to see how this was going to play out because I had actually encountered the Father, as a provider and as protector. And so it's just my reaction and my response after those sessions, after really encountering him. It's like he didn't have to talk me out of my fear because my focus was no longer on what I'm afraid of, but I was immediately drawn back to who I know him to be. And I cannot wait to see how this is going to play out, and so that's my heart, and what people typically experience is that the things where they used to get really triggered, what would have, stumped them up before, it's like the trigger's just gone. Instead, they now have an experiential encounter. They're remembering how they saw Jesus or what they've learned about him. That's their new way of interpreting, the things that used to be really scary. And understanding too, in inner healing, it's not always just 1 or 2 sessions, especially when we start dealing with people that are extremely traumatized. It's a process, and it's okay that it gets to be a process. Typically, the severely traumatized, they weren't just really traumatized in one specific event. It was usually, a progression and a continuation. And so just to also give people freedom and permission to understand it's okay, to be in process. And it's very gentle. And if he were to try to fix us in a 2-hour session, a lifetime of pains and traumas that we'd experience, I think we would explode. I don't think we have the capacity, to receive that much healing in 1 2-hour session. Although that can happen too.
That's true. Yeah. So many of the ones that I've sat in on as a prayer partner, even though I've been through some of the training that you've done, I don't facilitate, but to see somebody's skin color change at the end of a session, or their shoulders lift, or their, and sometimes it'll be even like we've gotten to the end, we're like, show up, Jesus, come on, show up. We're about done. And then, man, there's a breakthrough. And then the physical changes that you see, I think that's one of the most exciting parts about being part of the inner healing team.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things in inner healing too is a lot of times you don't realize, so you'll go through an inner healing and it was funny. Like my husband, oh gosh, I don't know how many years, 20 years ago or something, had gone to this deliverance training session. Actually, it was in the Sacramento area when we were in California. And he came back. I mean, he had a great experience. It was a great training, all that kind of stuff. And he says, of course, you know, he's like the SWAT guy and sniper and all, you know, so it's like a whole nother ball game. But he's like, I want one of those, like, slam you up against the wall, you know, like all the drama experience. I'm like, you've watched way too many movies, but, you know, wanted that experience. And I'm like, the majority of people are like, I'm not really feeling anything. But like what I explain is until you're met with that trigger again. So let's say your spouse, he leaves cupboard doors open all the time, and you literally want to rip them off the hinges every time you go into the kitchen because the cupboard doors are all, because you can't, you know, and then one day you go in, cupboard doors are open, and you just shut them, and you don't think, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't want to rip the cupboard doors off the hinges. Right. You know, that's what I see the majority of times. Then the, you know, angels singing over you and, oh my gosh, you know, my life has changed. And, you know, I have seen miraculous, you know, sudden deliverance over addictions and different things like that. But I would say the majority of them, you know, are so gentle, and they're these little layers that typically, you know, so oftentimes you don't even realize it until you're met with that trigger again and realize it really is gone. Oh my gosh, this is freedom, you know.
Well, I think what we really try to facilitate in the inner room, it's not so much about even solving a problem or, you know, fixing something as much as it is we consider a real success if we could just get you connected to him. If you could just experience an encounter with him, something definitely does shift. You can't meet with him and not feel a shift. I mean,
no, I totally get that.
That kind of goes back, Cheryl, to what you're saying. We've literally seen just the countenance shift and the change.
Oh yeah,
so
right.
Alive, like really encountered him in a new way.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't know it. So to your point, Melissa, it's subtle and gentle in their heart, but you can see something going on, you know, on the outside, and even if there's not, you know, jumping up and down. And
I would say, and maybe how, you know, they can have an experience with Jesus, and obviously you are changed, but not realize, oh, that trigger's gone, that issue's gone, that, you know, whatever, until they've actually met with that trigger again and realize it worked, you know. Yeah. So I guess that's probably what I was trying to explain. But yeah, you obviously, I mean, for me, a meeting with Jesus anytime, that's like obviously the best feeling in the world, and he gets to do whatever he wants to do in those moments, or what needs to be done. But
yeah, and just you know, for our viewers, I really wanted to just give them an idea of like what, you know, what to expect. We're kind of talking around some things, you know, but they might, you know, and they might all look different. And some people would call inner healing one thing, and some people would call it another. And, you know, there's just a lot of, it's kind of a new term, really. I mean, I didn't grow up in church hearing about it, you know, learning about it. And man, that explains a lot, you know.
Yeah.
That explains a lot of what's going on in our churches. But just knowing that, like you said, you meet Jesus and he goes back to that place that you can go back and see either where he was or what the truth is about that situation. And that's really meeting with Jesus in a lot of our sessions. When you say, Sharla?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just going through here and looking at some of these comments, and, you know, so today, back and forth, relationship skills and inner healing and they really do go hand in hand. I mean, they really do. And I just love seeing all of these comments on here. Sherry, you just said, you know, I had to first recognize how I was shutting my husband down and learn how to communicate to him when I'm upset. so we could hear me, you know, et cetera. It's so, there's relationship skills and inner healing are so intertwined, one helping the other.
Yes.
You know, as you get better relationship skills, you're actually going to be able to walk into more healing. And as you walk into more healing, you're going to grow in your relationship skills. I mean, it really does go hand in hand so beautifully. So beautifully. So, Sharla, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a rich session, such a rich session. I still want to look into some of the stuff that you guys are doing too, and in your groups for helping with the relationship skills. I think that's just huge and key right now. But if you would they just go like to INNERROOM.com, or what's the link that they would go to like look into the classes?
To go for the inner healing, it would be INNERROOM.co. But you can also get to the Inner Room through is it URDallas. Through the
urroom.org.
Yeah, the Dallas Upper Room.
Yeah, the letter U and the letter R.
Dallas.
Room.
No, well, no. Upper Room website. So you can go to
I don't know.
Okay, we'll look at that and make sure that we get that on there too, just so people can. So it's nice and easy. So I can like just click and get in there.
Get in there.
Yeah, just get in there.
Thank you for having me. This is just such a joy to people.
This has been awesome. It's been so awesome, so rich. If you wouldn't mind praying us out and just blessing all those relationships out there, it would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so Lord, God, we're just so aware of how relational you are, how it is your heart to be connected to us at the heart level, Lord, and that. And I just thank you so much for making those ways available to us, for helping us really understand how to receive you, how to connect with you, how to say yes, how to understand. And so, and to the degree that we are attached and connected to you, Lord, I just thank you for the way that you're able to flow through us to guide us and lead us in every step that we need to take, how to reach out, how to get the help. And so I pray for every heart that's listening. I pray for every marriage that's listening, that the perfect peace of Christ would guide you, would lead you, that you could trust that still quiet voice within that's leading you in the beautiful way that he's inviting you to find him, to meet with him, to get the help, to get the resources, to get the connection with him. So Lord, I just thank you for the beautiful sanctity of marriage. And I thank you that it's for freedom that you come to set us free. And so it's for free indeed, Lord, that we just praise you. We thank you. We love you. And it's in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you, Sharla. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Sharla.
We will see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.